All right, with our other three samples, we're going to be working on doing what are called roller print samples. You've got a handout on the rolling mill and on roller printing, and that's what this device here is. This is a rolling mill. So this device would have been used in early studios as a way of making sheet metal. There are two rollers that basically have a tensioning device on them, and then you're able to insert a billet. So normally you would, if you were making your own sheet from scratch, and this is something we do in our casting class, but you would take and roll, or you would melt down metal and make a billet by casting it into a billet mold, and then the raw material would then be this billet that you would then anneal and then roll through the rollers of the rolling mill, and you could start to create a thinner gauge, and then obviously the metal, the billet, would start to stretch, and you get a larger and larger sheet as a result of rolling this through as the material thins. And so if we, even to this day, if we had a piece of 16 gauge metal and we wanted to make it thinner, we could just roll it through these rollers with tension, and it would start to thin the metal. So this is a really great tool for processing your own sheet metal. But I'm sure at some point there's probably an apprentice that was using the rolling mill and accidentally got something on the rollers, or accidentally had a speck of something that got introduced into the process, and then wound up embossing or printing on the surface of the metal as they were rolling it through. And so thus then you can start to use the rolling mill as a surface embellishment or texturing device using various materials, and that's what we're going to do. So your one of your assignments is to bring in materials that you can use to roll through the rolling mill, and that's actually a quiz question also. What materials are safe to roll through the rolling mill? And before we get to that though, I want to talk just briefly about the steel surfaces of these rollers. The same thing applies to these rollers as it does to the anvil. So we can take steel wool and we can clean these rollers to make sure that there is nothing on them that will be transferred onto our metal. So before I use this, I usually like to roll, using the handle here, roll the rollers around and remove any staining, any residue. This particular tool is very important that you keep clean and that you keep moisture free. This is a very expensive machine. It can be damaged if people over tension it and put too much tension on the rollers, and it can also be damaged if those rollers get marred. So please, 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 please take good care. We just got this new rolling mill not too long ago, and we want to take care of it. And again, you could put a little oil, 3-in-1 oil, on these rollers if you want to further protect those surfaces. So again, I'll keep the steel wool out. That way people can use that to clean the rollers before they use it. Now you'll notice that when I turn this wheel on top, that brings the roller down when I go clockwise, okay? So when I go counterclockwise, it lifts the top roll. All right, now we've got our annealed metal. Again, the metal must be annealed. And then I've also brought over my piece of brass that's unannealed. Now, as a way to protect the rolling mill, we usually advise making a sandwich, a metal sandwich with whatever material you're trying to emboss into the copper being stuck between the copper and the brass. And the brass is unannealed so that it is hard and will help promote the embossing of our copper, okay? Now, material-wise, what can you put in here? Well, there's a wide range of things, but I want to start with what you shouldn't put in here. One thing would be steel. I would like to not see any steel introduced into the rollers, because it could potentially, the rollers are soft enough that it could emboss the rollers and ruin our rollers. That thus said, we could have, if you have a sandwich and there's no way that the steel can contact then I would be okay with it. But do ask me first if you don't mind. No money. I just, I've seen it before. It's kind of boring. Let's see what else. Yeah, so no money, no steel, and then no green material, meaning leaves. If you're gonna stick a leaf in here, make sure it's dry. And leaves are amazing to roll. So are feathers, things of that nature, right? So natural materials can go in here, but they should not have anything that's gonna like juice, that's gonna squeeze out and then potentially etch into my rollers. So make sure it's dried, make sure whatever the material is dry, and make sure you have a sandwich that goes with it of brass and then your copper. And it doesn't matter which direction that we roll this through, either is fine. And then some people will use masking tape to kind of make the sandwich and stick it together. It's optional, but I will say that whatever you put in here, it will be destroyed. It's going to get obliterated. So don't bring in, grandmother's like favorite doily, that she made. It'll ruin it. Don't bring in family heirlooms. Anything that's precious to you, don't use, because it will typically destroy it. It's amazing what you can do with basic materials like paper, building up layers of paper that are cut into different shapes. You can even take paper and do that thing we did as kids, making snowflakes, cut those up and then use sections of that. It will emboss. Just having one layer of paper with an opening cut out in it will emboss. Tape will also emboss. Sandpaper, again, just make sure sandpaper does not contact the rollers so that the grit would get in there. You could do screen wire. So I've got some different meshes, and this is a steel mesh, but I'm going to sandwich that in. I could use that. I could use burlap. I could use fabric. I could do lace. Absolutely looks amazing when it's rolled. So I'll try to roll this here in a second. Different mesh screens. And then something else we've been doing here lately is even laser cut chipboard, right? This is a thin chipboard, and we'll roll it. Now, things like plastic that's gonna shatter, it's not gonna work, it's not gonna print. Sometimes, now sponge is cool, but sponge is so squishy that you gotta kind of roll it through first to flatten it a little bit, and then you can get a decent embossing on it, on the metal with it. But you're gonna have to, things that are really squishy or rubbery may not take. So again, it has to be the right consistency. So a thing I really like quite well is even produce bag from the grocery store. So when you buy produce and it comes in that mesh bag, that works really well. So your task is to find some materials that you can roller print on your 3 2x2 samples. Okay, so let's go ahead and introduce to you how this works. So I'm going to put my material, I've just cut it with some scissors. I do have it hanging out, that's not going to be a problem. And I'm going to sandwich that in. Now you'll notice I can open up my rollers, and this is how I usually start this process. I open up the rollers, I tighten down the rollers until I can't pull this out. Now, there is a dial on the top of this machine, so I usually, there's a little arrow here, and so I'll look and see where that, like what number that arrow is closest to. And so mine's at 25 right now, okay, so it's at 25. And I have to watch this number. I'm gonna back off the pressure, and I'm watching the 25 to see where it is. I almost had to bring it all the way back around to 25 to be able to remove the sandwich. I go back to where I was with the 25 being at the arrow. So now I know that my rollers are where I was when I had this inserted. And now I'm going to add a little extra tension. So I'm going to make sure I continue to turn clockwise so that now the 25, instead of being here where this arrow was, it's now pointing at the wall. Now, depending on the material and how squishy or how forgiving it is, you might need to have the arrow pointed toward me, okay, or that direction. So you have to gauge this. If it's too much, though, you can damage the machine. So if you start to roll it and the handle feels really easy, you know that you might need a little bit more tension, okay? If you start to roll it and you can't move it, you've got way too much tension and you need to back off before you try to shove that the rest of the way through. So I'm gonna have, this is a little squishy, so I'm gonna have it pointing over there. I'm gonna jam this into the roller like so, okay? So I'm just pushing it into these on the back side, and then I'm gonna take the handle and I'm gonna roll this through. Now it's gripped, it's starting to pull it in. And I can put my hand over here to catch it. You'll see we did get some little remnants of stuff on here, so I wanna make sure brush that off, or take my steel wool and make sure, because then, you know, if you leave that on there, that'll emboss on the next person's piece. And now I'll show you. So we take this sandwich off, and look at that. We got this wonderful embossed texture. And it looks a little faint. You may not be able to see it on camera, but it looks a little faint, but once we put patina on this, it will darken the deep recesses and it will look amazing. So now my next step then, because this has gotten deformed, right, it's curved, I'll take my rawhide hammer on the anvil, move this so you can see. So I'll take my rawhide mallet and I will flatten. I put the curved side up and I hammer the curve down. Okay, and that's sample number 1 for roller printing. And I normally tap this if it's got any, like if it rings or tick 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 tick, I know that I don't have it flat, so I need to hammer it a little bit more. That's pretty good. All right, so there's that sample. Now let's go back and let's do another. So this time, let's run something like, let's run this mesh. So I've got this like mesh. Now my brass, I'll use it again, okay? So my brass, and if it gets curved, you can come back, even though it's work hard, you can come back and try to flatten it and use that same piece of brass again. Okay, now this time I'm gonna need to set my machine up again differently, right? So we'll open this up and insert the piece halfway in, and then we'll tighten down. Okay, now my roller, I'm setting it a little bit before 25. I'll back this off. So these numbers are going to be different based on your material. So I'm going to go back to where we were. And again, I'll just show you. So there's my raw copper, right? No surface on it. And then I'm going to add a little bit of tension to this. This won't take much, so I'm only going to have my 25 pointing over there, not over here. I'll insert the whole sandwich, and then I'll roll this through. All right, and we wind up with this surface texture on it. So if you wanted, you could even experiment with rolling multiple textures. You would just want to anneal between them, right? And so us annealing this sample is not going to damage the texture. The texture will still be there. And I'm just gonna, again, flatten this one. So if I wanted to, I could roll another texture over this. Now I'm actually gonna do, I probably should re-anneal this again, but I'm gonna roll another texture over that just for fun. Let me flatten my brass. Okay, so let's maybe roll, what else do I have? I got another pattern sheet here somewhere. Oh, there it is. So we've got this thinner pattern. Now let's do this wider, coarser pattern. I'm gonna trim that down just a little bit so I get a smaller piece. So I've got something that looks like that. Okay, so let's set this up. We'll loosen this. Insert our sandwich. Tighten down. Okay, so we're looking at like, now we're at 20. I'm gotta pay attention because I gotta go past a couple times here, past my 20. So there's 20. And then 20, and then we'll add a little bit extra. Okay, here we go. I can tell that needs a little more attention, so I'm just gonna put a little bit more on it. It's because that screen, bends easily. Now we just got small marks. I didn't quite do enough, see, so we barely got that to take. And it could also be the fact that I probably need to re-anneal that, but or it's because this is kind of standing up on the edge and it's squishy, so I might try to roll it again. Let's see if I can get a little bit more tension on that. It may not want to go because it's kind of bent. Let's try this. There we go. So now we get more of a pattern on it. So again, it's up to you. Your goal here is to create some sample pieces that we get to test textures on. So you do want to save, don't use all your 6-inch piece of metal because you're going to need that for other samples. But if you want to take these same 3 and re-roll or play with more, that's totally fine. One thing I forgot to mention about the rolling mill is that this does have smooth rollers on it, but sometimes you'll find that some rollers will have grooved rollers, either part way in here where 1/2 is smooth or 3/4 is smooth and then 1/4 has grooves, or you'll see grooved rollers out here. Grooved rollers are for actually tapering wire, so you can use it to change a gauge of a thicker wire down to a smaller gauge wire. So just wanted to mention that. One other thing then I wanted to show were just some previous samples. This is what we're going to wind up doing eventually. We will be adding patina to our roller print sample, and this will end up giving you a lot of contrast in your sample. And so I just thought showing you a few different examples of things that have been done. Like for example, here's a produce bag, and here's a lace, here's paper clips. String or cord that's woven looks amazing. Again, a wire mesh material, produce bag again. Lots of options. Here are like little like cut out stars, sequins almost. This is just wire that's wrapped, burlap. This is some sort of mesh. I can't remember what that was exactly. Here's just a kind of smorgasbord of different samples. This is a saw blade. This is dried flowers. Really, really beautiful. Cut paper. More cord. Unraveling of a screen or fabric. Look at that. That's like awesome, right? Lace. Synthetic leather kind of wallet piece. Here's some tooling, like from a wedding dress. Just amazing, right? What you can achieve. Here's a dried leaf. I don't have a feather here, but well, actually, no. Is that my feather sample? Yeah, that's not my best one, but feathers are amazing. If anybody has a bird or collects feathers, but I just wanted to show those. This is an example of what we're going to be doing. So you're going to have 3 samples, and then we can integrate these into a piece of jewelry later on. So we're just starting with the first steps. Okay, hope that gives you some ideas for some materials to bring in. Look forward to seeing what you bring. All right, so I think that wraps us up for the demo. So just like I said, don't forget you need to make sure and bring some materials in for roller printing. And I will also cover a few more things on stamping if you want to see that in class. And so you'll be cutting So laying out your metal, once you get that, using a stomp shear, annealing, using the torch, and then we'll be working in class on trying to get these 4 samples, right? 1 stamping and 3 roller printing. We'll try to get those done. So this is this kind of concludes this first demo, and I look forward to working with you in class, and I'll be available to answer questions, and we'll be able to get some things done. So I look forward to being able to work with you. So hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, just make sure you got the info down. And again, I will put up the notes from today as an image, and you can make sure and read your handouts and be prepared for the quiz, which will happen a week from Monday. So be looking for that, okay? All right, thanks so much. Bye.